For the better part of the last decade, the question has been raised again and again. When will the line be drawn for those who supported Donald Trump, especially figures like Joe Rogan, whose endorsement arguably helped secure Trump's presidency? At what point do Republicans throw up their hands and say, enough is enough? We've seen Trump lie countless times, but will there ever be a point where his supporters finally say, you've crossed the line? For years, many, including myself, have wondered whether such a moment would ever come. Now, after weeks of a war initiated by Trump, who campaigned 3 times on the promise to keep us out of conflicts exactly like this, it seems that a faint line may be beginning to appear. It's not a huge shift, but it's noticeable, especially among some Republicans, Trump supporters, and the American people more broadly. This line seems to run straight down the middle of Trump's powerful political coalition, the very same one he assembled in 2024. Even figures from his past, like a pair of old Fox News colleagues, are starting to voice their concerns. For example, a Fox News host recently pointed out the death toll from the war, 7 American personnel dead, and tragically, 175 young girls killed in an Iranian school. This raises serious questions, with the president denying involvement while his own defense secretary has acknowledged the investigation into the incident. This is no longer just a partisan issue. Americans are grappling with the fear and uncertainty surrounding another prolonged war. The images of deadly strikes being conducted in our name are starting to take a toll, especially as the White House's social media pages post real-life war footage, mixing it with clips from movies like Tropic Thunder and video game highlights. This juxtaposition has not gone unnoticed. In response, former NFL star Ryan Clark publicly distanced himself from the use of such imagery. As a former Pittsburgh Steelers star, he found it deeply insensitive to see war portrayed with Tropic Thunder and football highlights. Clark expressed his disappointment, pointing out that families in the U.S. have loved ones risking their lives for our freedoms, and they don't see war as a sport. He emphasized that war doesn't deserve to be turned into a highlight film, and that this misuse of imagery is disrespectful to those who are truly suffering. Ryan Clark's criticism goes beyond just the imagery. He called the Trump administration unprofessional and laughable. His words were not just about politics, but about the morality of the war itself. He raised an important point. War is not a game. It's a matter of life and death, and we should be treating it as such. Clark's voice is not the only one calling out this shift in the portrayal of war. There's a growing movement among those who have largely stayed quiet to speak out about the moral implications of these decisions. This moment feels different because figures like Ryan Clark, who aren't traditionally involved in politics, are now speaking out. It's a new chapter in the ongoing debate about Trump's leadership, one that doesn't just involve political pundits but everyday Americans. Clark, by using his platform to speak out, is drawing attention to a moral issue that is much bigger than partisan politics. His words have a sense of urgency to them, as they call for a reevaluation of how we approach war and its consequences. As we witness this shift, it's clear that the concerns surrounding the war aren't just political. They are about the fundamental values that this country was built on. Clark, like many others, doesn't want to be identified with this war. He doesn't see this as a political issue, but as a moral one. The war is costing lives, innocent lives, including children in schools. The use of propaganda and the manipulation of war imagery for political gain is causing a growing sense of outrage. This isn't just about Trump. It's about the very direction this nation is heading. Clark's stance is a reminder that war should never be trivialized. It's a critical moment where those who are respected in culture and sports are stepping up to voice their concerns, and it signals that a change may be on the horizon. The question is no longer just political, it's about the morality of the situation. The line, once faint, is beginning to show more clearly. As this war in Iran continues, the ripple effects are becoming impossible to ignore, and they're starting to hit home. You don't need to look far to see the economic impact of the decisions being made in Washington. Just today, the stock market took another dive, and oil prices have continued to climb. Gas prices, in particular, have already surged by nearly 60 cents a gallon since Trump initiated this war less than 2 weeks ago, and there's no sign that they'll be coming back down anytime soon. This has led to a new narrative being pushed by Trump and his allies in Congress and the media, a familiar slogan that's now being used to justify the rising costs. You've likely heard it by now. Short-term pain for long-term gain. It's a catchy phrase, but one that seems to gloss over the immediate struggles Americans are facing. The idea that higher gas prices and an unstable economy are just temporary setbacks for a brighter future is hard for many to swallow. The message has been pushed out repeatedly by conservative commentators and officials close to Trump, suggesting that the pain we're feeling at the gas pump is a necessary sacrifice for some greater strategic gain down the line. But the reality is, there's no easy way to reverse the economic damage caused by this war. It's not as simple as just turning off the war machine and hoping the economy bounces back quickly. The problem is that a significant portion of the world's oil supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz, a vital waterway near Iran's southern coast. If the flow of oil through this region is disrupted, whether by military action or other means, it causes a major supply crunch, and with it, higher gas prices. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Iran's new hardline leader has made it clear that he intends to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed, which would effectively choke off one of the world's major oil suppliers. This could create a massive, long-term problem for global oil markets and, by extension, for gas prices. There's no quick fix for this. Even global efforts to release emergency oil reserves, like the ones from the International Energy Agency, IEA, have proven ineffective. The IEA has flooded the market with oil, but it hasn't been enough to lower prices significantly. This is a huge blow to the global oil supply, and as the IEA has pointed out, it's the largest disruption in oil supplies in history. Even with all their reserves, the supply released by the IEA would only make up about a fifth of the barrels being lost each day. This means that the impact on gas prices will likely continue, and without the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, there's little chance of prices coming back down to what they were before the war began. This brings us to the bizarre rhetoric that's been coming from Trump and his administration. Trump has repeatedly downplayed the severity of the situation, even suggesting that everything is fine. He claimed that the Strait of Hormuz is in great shape, and that the U.S. has taken out most of Iran's military assets. Yet, reality tells a very different story. Just last night, 2 oil tankers that attempted to pass through the strait were attacked, erupting in flames as Iran launched strikes against them. The situation is far from fine, but Trump's response is to brush it off as if it's no big deal. In fact, Trump's energy secretary recently ruled out the option of providing military escorts for oil vessels attempting to navigate the strait, acknowledging that even the U.S. Navy isn't ready to take on that responsibility. Meanwhile, officials within the U.S. government have confirmed that Iran has been laying deadly mines in the strait, making it even more dangerous for ships to pass through. Military analysts have gone so far as to say that reopening the strait may require a ground invasion to secure the Iranian coastline, which would escalate the conflict even further. This situation is creating a deep hole for Trump, one that is becoming increasingly difficult to climb out of. Not only is this a major crisis for any sitting president, but it's particularly disastrous for Trump because he spent much of the last year touting his success in lowering gas prices. During his time in office, he repeatedly boasted about how affordable gas had become under his policies, claiming that prices had dropped significantly during his presidency. But now, with prices climbing higher by the day, he's trying to reframe the issue entirely. Trump has shifted his narrative to suggest that rising oil prices might actually be a good thing for the U.S. economy, arguing that higher oil prices benefit American oil producers. He claims that the U.S. is the largest oil producer in the world, so when prices go up, it's a win for America. Of course, the we in that statement isn't you or your neighbors. It's big oil companies and CEOs who benefit from higher prices, while everyday Americans foot the bill at the gas pump. This logic is a tough sell, even to the most loyal Trump supporters. Trump's sudden shift in stance on gas prices isn't just a slap in the face to everyday Americans. It's also an attempt to justify his actions by making it seem like high prices are part of some grand economic strategy. But the truth is, the only ones really profiting from these higher prices are the CEOs of the oil and gas companies. It's hard to see how this is a good thing for regular citizens when their bank accounts are being drained every time they fill up at the pump. This move from Trump comes after he spent years championing the importance of low gas prices as a key issue for voters. He made the argument time and again that affordable gas prices were a symbol of his administration's success. Yet now, with prices soaring, he's trying to reframe the situation entirely, suggesting that the rising prices are actually a positive development. This logic doesn't hold water, and even his most ardent supporters are likely starting to question how they can reconcile this with the promises he made on the campaign trail. But it's not just the price of gas that's spiking. Fertilizer prices are also climbing, and that's hitting farmers across the country. The war has disrupted supply chains, and now farmers are feeling the pain as the cost of essential supplies continues to rise. The economic fallout from Trump's war in Iran is rippling through every corner of American life, affecting not just the working class, but also industries that are critical to our food supply. And then there's the military spending. The Pentagon has reported that this war has already cost taxpayers more than $11 billion in just the first 6 days. That's just the direct costs. It doesn't even account for the buildup of military hardware and personnel, which further drives up the cost. By the end of the year, this number will be staggering, and it's a bill that every American taxpayer is footing. In total, the U.S. is spending nearly $2 billion a day on this war. That's more than $700 billion a year if the conflict continues at its current pace. The cost is mounting, and there's no clear end in sight. This war, initiated by Trump for reasons that remain murky at best, is rapidly becoming an unsustainable financial burden on the American people. And it's not just a matter of money. The human cost is also rising, with countless lives lost, both American and foreign, and it's unclear if any of this is leading to a real, achievable objective. The problem for Trump, though, is that this conflict isn't just about oil prices or military spending. It's also about the growing dissent from some of his most loyal supporters. Even figures like former NFL star Ryan Clark, who have been largely apolitical in the past, are starting to speak out. Clark, for instance, has expressed his deep disappointment at how the war is being portrayed. He's not just concerned about the politics of it, he's raising the moral issue. War, as he sees it, should never be trivialized. It should never be made to seem like a highlight reel or a game. People are dying, and those who risk their lives for our freedoms are not doing so for someone else's agenda. Clark's perspective is part of a larger, growing movement of people who are disillusioned by the way this war is being handled. They are raising concerns not just about the political aspects of the war, but about the morality of it. They are asking why American soldiers are being sent into a conflict that many feel is not in their best interest. This is where the line starts to appear a moral line, not just a political one. And it's not just Americans who are questioning the war. Global leaders are also starting to voice their opposition. Even leaders from Europe, who have traditionally been close allies of the U.S., are now publicly denouncing Trump's actions. This includes some surprising figures, like Italy's right-wing Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, who, despite being expected to support Trump, has publicly stated that Italy will not participate in this conflict. Meloni's refusal to support Trump's war, despite her political alignment, speaks volumes about the growing international opposition to this conflict. It's a reminder that the consequences of Trump's decisions are not just felt at home, they're being felt on the global stage as well. In Spain, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has also made it clear that his country will not stand with Trump and Netanyahu on this issue. Sanchez, who represents a left-wing government, has spoken out against the war in no uncertain terms, stating that Spain will not support any military intervention in Iran. This is a bold stance, particularly given Spain's close relationship with the U.S. under previous administrations. Sanchez has gone so far as to withdraw Spain's ambassador to Israel and to close Spanish military bases to U.S. forces, a strong signal of his opposition. Sanchez's actions reflect the growing frustration among European leaders who are increasingly at odds with Trump's foreign policy decisions. In his statements, he denounced the hypocrisy of supporting the very forces that are causing destruction and chaos while simultaneously claiming to defend human rights. He pointed out the irony of the situation, where those who are fueling the fire of conflict are now complaining about the smoke it creates. His refusal to support Trump's war, even before the bombing of the school in Iran, shows the depth of his commitment to this position. Meanwhile, Belgium's deputy Marc Botonga took his condemnation to the European Parliament, where he delivered a fiery speech denouncing Trump's actions. His speech was both emotional and pointed, as he challenged those who support the war to look into the eyes of the innocent victims, including the young girl killed in the bombing of a school in Iran. Botonga reminded the world that the bombs being dropped are not bringing democracy, they are bringing chaos, destruction, and untold suffering to innocent civilians. The images of children losing their lives in these conflicts are powerful, and they're resonating with people around the world. Botonga's speech underscores the human cost of war and how the devastation caused by these actions is something that cannot be undone. It's not just a matter of politics, it's a matter of basic human decency. As the war rages on, It's becoming clearer that Trump and Netanyahu are increasingly isolated in their desire for continued conflict. The global community is pushing back, and the voices of dissent are getting louder. This is a significant turning point, not just in U.S. foreign policy, but in how the world views the actions of the Trump administration. In the wake of this growing international opposition, it's clear that the consequences of Trump's decisions are being felt far beyond American borders. Europe is watching closely, and leaders across the continent are making it clear that they will not support this war. Whether Trump and his allies can hold on to this conflict in the face of mounting global resistance remains to be seen. The international backlash is not the only pressure building on Trump. At home, the American public is also starting to react. The growing sense of disillusionment with the war is impossible to ignore, and more voices are speaking out every day. As the costs of the war continue to rise, both financially and morally, many Americans are questioning whether the conflict is worth it. The war has already cost taxpayers billions of dollars, and as we've seen with the skyrocketing gas prices and the fertilizer price hike, the ripple effects are far-reaching. The question on everyone's mind is, when does it end? Trump's rhetoric about short-term pain for long-term gain seems to be falling on deaf ears. For the American people, there is no long-term gain in sight. There's only mounting frustration and rising costs that affect every part of their lives. For many, this war is no longer just a political issue, it's a daily reality. And as the war drags on, with no clear resolution in sight, the American public is becoming more and more disillusioned. The situation is exacerbated by the fact that the Trump administration seems to be operating with no clear plan for how to bring the war to an end. There's no indication that the U.S. is any closer to achieving its objectives in the region, and the military action is costing lives, both American and foreign, every single day. And while Trump continues to insist that the war is necessary for national security, it's becoming increasingly difficult for many to see how this conflict benefits the country in the long run. As the American public grapples with the reality of this war, it's clear that the costs are not just financial, they're deeply human as well. The images of war and the stories of families who have lost loved ones in this conflict are becoming more prevalent. For those who have supported Trump in the past, these stories are starting to make them question whether this war is truly in America's best interest. The question of morality is now at the forefront of the debate, and many are beginning to speak out against what they see as an unnecessary and unjustified conflict. The moral question is not just being raised by everyday Americans, it's also being asked by figures who have typically been supportive of Trump's policies. Voices like Ryan Clark, who have no partisan agenda, are speaking out because they believe the war is being conducted irresponsibly. For them, it's not about politics. It's about the values this country is supposed to stand for. Ryan Clark's position is that the people who are risking their lives in this war are doing so not for the safety of Americans, but for someone else's agenda. What's more, the fact that these voices are now being heard in the cultural and sports realms is significant. People who have influence outside of the political arena are stepping up and making their voices heard. Ryan Clark's statement about the moral implications of this war resonates with a much larger audience. His words carry weight because they speak to something fundamental, the value of human life and the importance of integrity in leadership. In a world where the voices of celebrities and influencers carry so much power, it's hard to ignore the significance of this moment. When figures like Clark speak out against the war, it's not just a political statement, it's a moral one. It's a reminder that leadership should be about protecting people, not putting them in harm's way for personal or political gain. Clark's perspective is helping to shape the growing resistance to the war, and it's pushing the debate into a more ethical realm where the question isn't just about political affiliations but about the greater good of society. As this debate continues, it's becoming clear that the consequences of Trump's decisions will be felt for years to come. The financial cost of the war is already staggering, and the human toll is incalculable. The American public, once largely silent, is now finding its voice. And the voices of influential figures like Ryan Clark are helping to push the conversation in a direction where morality, not just politics, is the focal point. The question remains, when will the line be drawn? When will people finally say that enough is enough? The war is not just a political issue, it's a moral one, and as the pressure builds, it seems more and more likely that the American people will demand a change in direction. Trump's war in Iran is costing lives, wasting resources, and tearing apart the fabric of American society. The time has come for leaders to step back from the brink of conflict and prioritize peace over war. The future of the nation may depend on it. If you're concerned about the direction this country is heading in and the moral implications of our foreign policy, it's time to speak up. Share this video with your friends and family, and let's start a conversation about how we can push for responsibility responsible leadership that puts people before politics. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below to let us know your thoughts on this issue. The world needs leaders who will protect peace, not provoke war. Together, we can make a difference.